for the nerds. This is for the brainiacs. This what we deserve. Go ahead and play it back. You ain't gonna touch me. You not gonna do nothing. You are not above me. I bet you wish you was me. I know it. I know.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another special After Dark episode of the Only Friends podcast.
Fuck, it's late.
It feels late for you?
I'm ready for bed.
Oh.
I still got
I need
lift.
a nap.
Oh, so you guys...
Oh, wow, look at this. Man, we look good.
Yeah, a couple...
Must be the Salt for Why Academy Day, huh?
You guys are a couple great team members. Look at you, just getting hydrated, wearing the brand.
Dude, I'm feeling EP.
We both got Did you guys notice Landon's shorts today?
That they're normal sized?
They're like a decent length.
They are not normal sized.
Go on.
They are the biggest. They
They're
look
oversized.
Yeah, like it's exact opposite of what he usually wears.
Mhm.
I was taken aback.
Yeah, I don't like it. It's laundry day.
I personally prefer it.
You could swim in those things. You might have to because it's raining outside.
It is indeed raining.
I'm just sleepy.
We are joined by another special guest, the one and only Justin Chalk, a.k.a. my pickleball partner, a.k.a. one Maoli.
Yeah, see,
Maoli.
He says Maoli as well.
Get it right.
AKA Team World,
Yeah,
AKA
Team
Team
World,
Biceps,
Team Murphy
AKA
too.
Flex on them.
He is
Hypertrophy.
Team Biceps.
Flex
Damn.
on them.
Shout out to Leon and Tammy.
Where is the flex?
I'm not flexing. Landon got a flex.
No, I'm not you, though.
You're better than me. You're better.
I'm not. I know. Dude, we played pickleball with Justin like 2 years ago. He did not look like this.
No, he got yoked.
Nah.
Dude got yoked, for sure. He took Conrad's spot, who
Went to Drake.
randomly just got a Drake ticket. He goes, oh my God, I can't believe there's a podcast. I totally forgot. Somebody just bought me a Drake ticket.
Oh, would you look at the time?
I know. What? Like what?
Like, oh,
What
boo-hoo.
is that?
Just go.
Put it on the tab.
Put it
No,
on the
I didn't pay
tab.
for anything.
No,
this
I just
time.
mean his Drake ticket value.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
The old Drake ticket value, if you will.
DTV.
We have a nice show lined up for you guys today. We're going to catch you up on a little bit of current events, as well as some of the most common mistakes that we see whenever we host the Solve for Why Academy. Justin has been gracious enough to join us both on the podcast and kind of observe a bit, get to play in the game with the Academy. So he'll be able to give you a little bit of his insight as somebody who is a relatively studied player amongst those who hope to get to his level, if you will.
Relatively.
Well, I think you're doing pretty good for yourself. You run those WSOP streets.
We don't know that.
Well, I mean,
What do we know?
like,
Somebody knows something.
Guapo tells me a thing or two about a thing or two.
He just said I heart double D's is better than me. So.
Wow.
No. Hold on a second.
Shots
Hold on a
fired.
second.
Shots
Listen,
fired.
Because I said I Heart Double D's is easily one of the best regs that plays 200 NL does not mean that I think he's better than you. I'm just saying I've played a lot more with him than I have with you. It's
Hey, Guapo, it's
very
great to
possible
see
that
your
you're better
face
than me.
again.
Thanks, man.
What do you think
Not-
about
not-
I Heart
not cut it off.
WDs? What-
No,
you-
no comment.
No comment.
Wow.
You don't want to get a little bang bang in there, bro. It's 200 NL on WSOP.
200 NL.
We're here to create enemies.
Yeah.
Justin and Guapo are here to make a tier list.
Okay. I need the 200 NL tier list.
Oh, I could give you that.
Okay. Let's go.
I mean, well, I'll start. You know what? Let's go tit for tat. I'll start with Mr. Sushi
Okay.
because I think he's.
Yeah, sushi's good. Shout out to Mr. Sushi.
Mhm.
He one of our Discord members.
Justin just got,
What about Lou?
Oh, Lou Hefner, baby.
Lose an animal.
Lou Hefner.
He pays my bills.
Oh, bang bang, baby. Let's go.
Lou's the man. Actually, the only person who is a little bit more spewy than him and is absolutely terrible, and I have no problem saying this, is Helionic. So anytime,
Oh man, my boy Dyer out here just catching strays.
Wait, that's Dyer?
Yeah.
Oh.
He plays poker the same way he plays pickleball. A little spastic, a little aggressive. He's like Nick Mamoni.
a little spastic.
I mean, the man likes to see three. You can't blame him.
Okay.
How else are you going to win if you don't at least get to the flop?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm also very tilted today. Connie was trolling the absolute shit out of me.
You've been on one for a couple days.
No, it's kind of tilting. Like I'm trying to get better, and I don't know that I screwed up a hand, but
screwed up.
he just starts laughing uncontrollably. Like
Yeah.
it's the greatest thing he's ever seen. I'm
Welcome.
like, man, did I kick Connie's dog or something? I'm like,
Welcome to Conrad. He takes
right.
nothing in life seriously. He just incessantly trolls everyone around him 24/7,
And then goes to Drake.
and then goes to Drake.
I've never felt the wrath. I was
Literally, he could have just stuck around, did his intro, and no one would have known he wasn't on the pod today. But no, he selfishly went to Drake. Bang, bang.
You
Love you,
really just
Connie.
had to get that one out there.
I did. No, I actually don't care that he
I
went to
know,
Drake.
I know.
Justin is more than an adequate fill-in. It's raining. I don't know if you've noticed.
It is raining.
I'm a little worried that we're not even going to get home, judging by some of these reports that I'm seeing out here. There's
Let's
a
let's
sinkhole.
just pod to the morning.
Pod till the morning. Till the wee hours of the
That
morning.
No,
sinkhole is
You guys
we
want to
have-
join us till the wee a.m.?
Do we have
No.
footage of that sinkhole?
We have a picture of the sinkhole.
Yeah.
It's
Terrifying.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know where it goes. To the
The
great
depths
unknown.
of hell is where it goes.
Yeah, I don't know. Is there a lot of water in the depths of hell?
No.
I don't know.
Steam, probably.
Oh, this is something different.
Oh, Jesus.
The traffic
Runaway
cone's
cone.
gotten away from us.
That reminds me of that that gif from Pittsburgh with the dumpster going down.
Yeah.
going down the river.
Why's it always gotta be Pittsburgh, man?
Yeah, it's always
I saw
Pittsburgh.
a fight at
It's
a
always-
country
Oh
concert.
my God, that was insane.
Just 3 girls pulling each other's hair out. Of course, it has to be in fucking Pittsburgh.
Right.
Like it couldn't be anywhere else in America.
Whoa, where's that
Jesus,
at,
what is
Guapo?
this?
This is one of the casinos. I can't quite tell which one.
That
But
looks like our control room.
Yeah.
it is coming down. Man, those are some low ceilings for a casino.
Low ceilings scare me.
know.
I wonder which one this is. I
Could
don't
it
know.
be the double C?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. I don't know. I can't tell. But yeah, I mean, Vegas is leaking. It's leaking bad.
It ain't good.
It's gonna rain.
It
I
don't
got-
look good.
I got a
cuz.
flash flood warning at least 6 times on my phone. There was one point where during gameplay, everybody's phones
Just
went
sort
off.
of like sirens.
Oh my God.
I'm like, what the hell is happening? Yeah.
No, Brian, please. I'm sleepy.
Oh, now he knows what it's like to be on the other
yeah.
side of it.
I don't realize how.
Okay.
I don't realize how loud my voice is. I'm sorry.
Listen. I just had a cookie. The sugar's kicking in.
You-
I'm back, baby. Let's
That
go.
makes one of us.
You had 15 bagels today.
I've never seen a human being eat the way you have. You are a human dumpster.
It's
Yeah.
unbelievable.
I still have to lift after this. Yeah.
He just ate a bowl of tortilla chips and I assume some
Guac.
Yeah, something.
It was cereal.
It was like, so we got Chipotle catering, and they just give you like this giant container of guacamole, and like whatever was left, he just took the bag of chips, dumped it in there, mixed it up, and just ate the whole
I'm
thing.
so
That's
hungry.
after the 6 bagels and the. I'm sure you had some Chipotle.
I had some.
And
Must be
then-
nice.
He's carb loading.
Must be
He's
nice
got-
to have
it's
gotten
leg
some
day.
Chipotle.
Yeah, it went quick.
Yeah, they overdo it on the guac, but man, they sure underdo it on the meat.
They underdo
Oh,
it
I
on the
got
meat,
no- I
and
didn't
they,
get
they
very much
overdo
of
it on the lettuce. Why do we have so much goddamn lettuce?
lot of
it's-
rabbit food.
It's 3 cents to give you.
I know, but nobody's
pound
going to
and a
eat
half.
that much lettuce.
Of course
It's
not.
a business.
I know.
That's business, baby.
Yeah,
I
they're
got it
smart.
for 25 people. I thought that would be enough.
Yeah, but I'm 20 people.
We had a
That's
big turnout.
true. I always got to count Landon as what, 5, 6 people.
Well, God forbid he goes last. You know,
I did.
They say
I told
leaders
him-
eat last, Landon.
Thank
I
you.
did.
I told him that exact same thing. I said
Uh-huh.
Simon
I
Sinek.
did.
He did go last.
Oh, he got meat and I didn't.
No.
So someone went last.
Well, you didn't. You went last.
I got nothing.
You're
I
the
got
true
protein
leader.
pancakes is what I got. But that's okay.
That's all you
That's
want
all right.
anyway.
That's what you
I was
cook
prepared.
anyways.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe
Why
I
you
stopped at the,
shirking?
maybe I stopped at the gas station yesterday and got a pint of brownie ice cream. Maybe I have 2 frozen cookies waiting for me in the freezer at home to make an ice cream sundae sandwich.
Maybe you do.
Maybe.
I love that for you.
Hi, Conrad got to it already, and I won't have any of these things. I don't know.
It
It's all a
depends on what
mystery.
time he gets back from Drake.
What do you want to happen? Do you
I want it to be gone.
Yeah, that's
Liar.
Right.
I secretly want it to
No,
be
you
gone.
want it to be
No,
gone.
oh my God, no, he didn't because I had ice cream yesterday. And
Yeah.
he goes
Yeah,
after
he
the
wants
show.
it.
He goes, dude, you ate so much ice cream. I see cookies here. We could have made ice cream sandwiches.
Yeah, we could have, but instead you chose to eat over a half a gallon of ice cream.
You say we like you wanted it.
Well, it's not about want at that point. It's just about practicality. Like, we all could have made ice cream sandwiches and enjoyed ourselves.
I enjoyed myself.
We know you're fat. Jesus.
I'm not fat.
You're gonna be.
I'm not going to be fat. I've actually lost weight, surprisingly.
I know. He eats like this, and he's like, it's just falling off.
Imagine
of me.
how bad his metabolism was when he was like completely inactive.
Well, now it's through the goddamn
for
roof.
him to have gotten to like 300 pounds.
Right.
Because he's eating more now. It's just like shredding.
I'm eating
Is he
so
eating
much more now.
But he actually does things now.
I do things
That's what I'm
now.
saying. He's
Yeah, he works-
active.
yeah.
You know,
This is proof that you should do things and you can eat whatever you want. But if you
Yeah, if
don't
you're
do-
24.
Yeah, if you're in your mid to early 20s,
Right.
you can do that. But
Yes,
if
we
you're,
all know that. We all been there. We all went through that. Wait till you get to 40, big guy.
then what happened to
And
you?
you're, I mean, if you keep eating, listen, you think it's funny, but you keep eating like
Father
this.
time comes for us
You
all.
eat like this when you're my age, and you won't be, hot boy summer or whatever the hell you want to call it.
Matt eats a lot and lifts weights. Matt's in good shape. You eat a lot.
I do eat a fair amount.
Not as much as you.
Definitely not as much as you. That's for sure. But yeah, I have that old man strength. You know, I really get after it.
Mm-hmm.
We're out there pushing rhymes like weight. You know, like the famous Ice Cube once said. I'm not
see.
like Lamana doing downward doggy all day. Trying to
Downward doggy.
trying to
Doing doing calf dogs.
trying to get
Calf
that calf
dogs.
stretch in.
Why
Calf
are they
dog.
called
Calf
calf?
dogs,
Why are they
bro.
called calf dogs?
Because you're doing your calves while you're in downward dog.
Ah,
You're not
you're
doing,
moving rhymes
let's
like
be-
you're pushing.
Let's be
weight.
clear. You're not doing anything, but your calves are being,
Look, Brian has sick
targeted.
calves. You can't.
He does have sick calves. He has skinny man calves.
Skinny man.
Justin has sick calves.
Justin flex for
I
us.
have no
Dude,
calves.
his calves are disgusting.
I told him when I saw them. I said, "You have bodybuilder calves."
Could you? No. Bodybuilder calves are like Lamana's calves. Bodybuilders don't do legs, bro.
Yeah,
I
but
don't
when
do
they,
legs, man.
Shut up.
he says all he does is back squat and has.
Could you dunk? You
Huh?
think? You think you can dunk?
I can't jump to save my life.
That makes sense. You're pretty dense.
Yeah, too dense.
You're pretty short too.
Look, the flying chalk only moves laterally.
Yeah, it's lateral.
That's true.
quickness.
Yeah,
That is
lateral
true.
lateral agility.
That is true.
Yeah.
We missed you last night, buddy. Got in a couple good runs.
Oh, I heard.
Pickleball court.
I'll bring out my feathers next time. you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Bring out your feathers.
Yeah, I've got a peacock. For,
You gotta let me fly.
yeah.
Okay.
There were a surprising amount of ladies at the pickleball court last night. You would have enjoyed yourself.
What's
Little talent, I'm just saying.
a little more than
little
usual?
talent. You know, not
What
to
court did you guys go to?
Justin, that's disgusting.
Sunset Park Guap if you want to get
Can you
involved.
send Guapa the address?
No,
It's like, why is the screen just been stuck on
It's
Berkey
because
this
there's a
whole time?
pickleball
Guapa's
court right down
gone.
the street from you guys. I didn't know if you guys went to Sunset or not.
Oh, the one down the street from me is difficult. It's only 2 courts, and a lot of high school / college kids occupy it.
Oh, like just to go hang out.
No, they play not well, but they play.
All right.
And there's 24 of them at a time. So Justin thinks that we can just show up at midnight, throw our paddles down, and run the court. But
Maybe if I don't partner with you.
Face.
What do you want to do?
wow, I don't know what
Flying
you're talking
chalk
about.
needs some new skill next to him.
I got very good.
Team
I'll have you
World?
know.
Team World V2.
Mm-hmm.
Landon's good, or he
I
could
can
be.
get there.
He could be good.
I have to spend my time and energy. I need to spend a lot more time and energy.
Are you
Yeah,
better
you-
than Berkey right now?
No.
Oh, no shot.
I don't have any deference in saying you're better than me, man.
That's good. That's
Alright.
good. That's smart.
Look at him. He just looks like there's no shots. Like, all right.
I mean, I'm just being honest. I'll
Remember
tell you when you're better than
Conrad
me.
could beat all of us.
No, I don't.
Can I
and,
get?
and he came out the other night, and I reminded Tammy and Leon how ridiculous it is that they ever gave him positive reinforcement.
They
He just
should've.
looks like a fool out there. Like he's nowhere near where the ball is at. Like never in position, of course.
How long would it take for me to get better than Conrad?
I don't know if you have the DNA.
Connie's pretty athletic. He can get across
He's
the
fat.
court pretty quick.
Bro, pickleball does not require speed.
No, I'm saying it certainly doesn't hurt
What's
him.
it? What's it require? Coordination.
It does hurt him.
How do you figure?
Because
What's
if
the
he
fat
didn't have
wire?
speed, he would just be in the spot that he's supposed to fucking be in. But instead, he's just way out of position and thinks to himself, I can run. And then, good players just hit him in the middle of the chest. Oh my God, the amount of times that we're at the net or I'm at the net and he's supposed to be at the net but isn't, and then just comes sprinting up like a madman only to jump while he's getting hit in the chest by an attack. I'm just like, when will you learn? If you're just stationary, this doesn't happen.
I learned right away.
Did you?
Yeah, when you almost killed me.
Oh,
in the
that's right.
Bahamas.
I did teach you a very hard lesson. We were just messing around at
As
the
you
house.
should. Some things
man.
can only be learned kinesthetically.
That is true. And I taught a hard lesson to one of our students today. I won't mention any names, but he has a proclivity for playing the offsuit ace X in situations that he just shouldn't. So I'm watching the hand play out. Under the gun 1 opens. He's in the hijack, and I see an ace 9 flat. And I just walk out there, and I take his hand mid-hand and muck it.
It's like, put this in the muck.
Yeah.
He would have won the pot, too. Came ace high.
Yep.
But no, it doesn't matter. You got to learn the hard way.
That's right.
These hands are useless.
Tough love.
It was so funny.
You
though.
got to give a little tough love.
So funny.
We had another student who was playing 7 deuce every time it was dealt to him, and I asked him why, and he goes, "I'll get paid for the next 2 days." And I'm like, that's not how it works.
That's not how it works.
Like, yeah, they're gonna watch the footage and see you at 7 deuce, but you know, they're not gonna do anything different.
This is the classic rope-a-dope.
Wow.
Yeah, that's just not how poker works, though.
No, you can just play good and bluff.
I think that's as we kind of get into, you know, some of the biggest mistakes that we see from the students who walk through the door. I think one of them is that image is paramount over strategy.
Right.
Yes. I really think that the majority of people who walk through the door truly believe that their image and how they perceive others is the driving force in their decision-making process, as well as their opponent's decision-making process,
Right.
far beyond what makes any sort of logical sense.
Yeah, well, it's easier to break it down that way when you look at they're aggressive or they're tight. It's easier to go to always and nevers versus looking at the in-between.
Right.
When like you look at a certain board texture, some spots can be so much harder to bluff as is. But if you just label somebody as aggressive, you can just cope your way into bluff catching in spots they don't have bluffs.
Honestly, that might not even be the worst thing in the world. Like, I only say that because I think people just probably don't bluff enough themselves, and also probably don't call enough in general. I think the way that a lot of these environments end up playing out, and you know, you guys and Guapo specifically can talk a little bit more to it because you're in them. But I think generally speaking, what ultimately happens is you see a lot of tightness in the average spot where people are under 3-betting, you know, under c-betting perhaps on bad boards, under defending versus c-bet. You know, a lot of this stuff that leads to the passing of EV back and forth. And then on the outskirts or on the fringes, so to speak, you see a lot of overdoing it. So on the fringes, like, you might just see like way too many call downs in 3-bet pots. You might see like way too many check raise jams on two-tone boards, right? Like, you just see these extreme examples where as SPR gets lower, people just gravitate towards the always and nevers type of stuff. But in the middle, in the majority of the decisions, like what I would refer to as kind of the weeds, people just give up almost across the board, right?
Well, it's just like the in-between of most people give up, but some people will not give up too much.
Well, I'm not saying even give up in the sense of that they fold their hand. I'm saying give up in the sense that they don't think or try. They just have like this default mechanism that guides their decisions whenever it doesn't truly matter because the pot's not that big. You'll see it all the time, like a 3-way pot that's single raised where there's like, you know, 6 blinds in the middle and it just checks down.
Right. Or there's someone right to be had, like Marinelli from Detox did an interview talking about his strategy and how he studies, and he looks at every single pot that's over 6 big blinds.
Yeah.
Like every pot, doesn't matter how big it gets, whether it's all in or it's only 6 bigs, he's looking at it and seeing if he made a mistake or not.
Right.
Where in most cases, it's like people only care about if they got stacked or stacked someone. Where it's like, how'd you, like even today after the academy, I was asked by a couple guys about one hand where they both kind of played it, just both of them played the opposite side. And it was just a very big pot where someone tried to find a bluff. Where it's like, these spots are important, but at the same time, there might have been some other spots where your decision was more murky, but you just kind of let it go over your head because you're not worried about that and you're worried about the bigger pot.
Right. Yeah, I think the largest mistakes are often occurring in pots that are like under 20 big blinds.
Yeah.
And most
There's a lot
of
of
that,
give ups, check folds.
Yeah, most of that is just a byproduct of not wanting to have to put a lot of energy and thought into what is declared as standard.
Yeah, it's like an autopilot.
Right. Like you defend with pocket 9s, it comes king high, you face c-bet, you just fold. because that's the environment you're
Right,
in.
and to me, it's like what's going on here.
Right.
Yeah, like there's nuance to this.
Right, like these are hands that we have to fight with. If we're folding nines, we're probably folding too many backdoor draws and too many hands that have high equity in general and showdown value, et cetera, right?
Most of the spots when you make errors are going to be indicative of your overall strategy.
Right, and I think that the general overall strategy in low to mid stakes is make top pair.
Right.
And then be scared. It's make top pair and be scared.
It's make top pair and then realize, man, I have to keep calling, but I'm not happy.
Well, not even just necessarily from the defense standpoint. Like even from the aggressive standpoint, I think it's like a lot of make top pair and then be a little bit afraid to bet because pocket nines just folds versus c-bet.
Yeah, 3 street value is not very rare or not very common in low stakes live.
Right.
Like clear 3 street hands get broken up into 2 streets and 2 street hands go into 1 street a lot, where you're missing a lot of value just based off of the way that ranges works or the bets to be had. And you're trying to play this weird in between of what do I think somebody else is doing when you don't even know what the baseline is.
Yeah, I think that that's accurate, but I also think it's kind of natural. It's a bit of byproduct of everybody operating without an instruction manual. You know, if nobody knows what baseline is, then the new baseline becomes whatever the action reaction is in real time. And
yeah, the baseline is folding nines.
Yeah, if nobody's calling with worse than top pair, then it's really difficult to get 3 streets with top pair. You know?
Yeah.
But it also opens everybody up to exploiting. That means that you can now just start ramming and jamming bluffs for the first 2 streets. But if you make it any further than that, you're probably just against too strong of a range.
Yeah, right? That's a big one. That it's one of those things I think I came to the conclusion of years ago. I remember I made like a thread about live poker where I thought that most of the stuff that you're going to get value from, just from a red line standpoint, is on the turn. And then once you get continued on, you should be pretty careful because you're generating the overfold on flop and turn. That on river, it's hard to overfold when you've overfolded already. And that's kind of the way that the nature of, call it instinctual poker, works when we value money so much, where you don't want to play a big pot without having it. So you'd rather have not like a sunken cost, but if you're going to fold the turn to hands that you don't want to have a tough decision on the river, where if you do continue on turn, you've kind of set yourself up to call the river.
It is a bit of sunken cost fallacy. A lot of people do operate from the if I call turn, then I call river, assuming the board texture doesn't change mindset. Yeah. And kind of doubling down on that, I think one of the most freeing concepts that low to mid stakes players can gravitate towards is understanding that they need to carry forward a folding range on every single street.
Yes.
So the way that we conceptualize building a range overall, we have to understand that it's not just built of 2 parts of calls and raises. It's also built of folds. So
you're allowed to fold.
Hands that call the turn, some of them have to be allocated to folding river. And it's a very reasonable concept to call the turn strictly to fold the river versus bet. And the reason being is that hand can be the best hand on turn and still river and doesn't have to face the bet.
Can be best hand, can potentially improve, doesn't always face river bet.
Correct.
3 things that happen if you just continue.
Right. So now the hands that are bucketed to I need to call one more, but then fold to river aggression, will just often win if there's no river aggression.
It's got to be that feedback loop of when you float and then river brick, you check, they jam, you fold. There's that internal feeling of I could have just folded the turn and not given them more money.
Correct.
Where in reality, you're not giving anybody more money. You're just playing good poker, and that results in you folding later, and that's fine.
Right. What's your kind of takeaway, Justin? What are some things that you observed in the gameplay?
Well, for today, I don't know what was sounded like the other table.
The other table was wild.
Well, it was wild, yeah. But my table in general, it actually impressed me more than because I attended the MTT Academy and their fundamentals were very bad. And
as tournament players tend to be.
Yeah. And I was going to say in general, the biggest mistakes I see with the attendees are poor fundamentals, mainly pre-flop. And it compounds throughout the hand, like how you guys were going over.
Yeah.
Today on my table is generally, I didn't see as many, like nobody opened lint or they weren't flat calling, like
There was a lot of
random
three
hands.
betting.
There was
There
a
was
lot
a-
of
yeah.
three.
Well,
betting.
People play
You-
very aggressive pre.
I mean, you, Conrad, and Guapo were all at the same table,
Right,
so that's
right.
already a third of the lineup.
Yeah.
So I think that had a part to do with it. You also had Greg and
but
Dustin.
Efro too.
Yeah, so you had Greg and Dustin who had both attended
Oh,
previously.
they were a previous.
And
okay.
then obviously Efo's going to be a relatively strong player as well.
Yeah.
So 2/3 of your lineup is going to be pretty well studied.
Right. Yeah.
I do think that. Oh, Rob also had previously attended. He was.
It's
at your
funny
academy.
because I literally made it completely random, and
Yeah.
that's just how it fell. And I was like, these tables are a little like lopsided a little bit, but maybe it's good.
Well,
I don't know.
not
if it's-
necessarily lopsided. I think it's kind of a good thing. You kind of had
Right.
like the first timers
yeah.
who are newer and going to make bigger errors at one
Yeah.
table, and then the second timers and
That's what I mean. I did that exactly on purpose, so it would, be a better
Very sharp, Lamana,
experience.
very sharp.
Man,
job,
it
man.
is really interesting, this academy, because I mean, I've been to quite a few at this point. People played much more aggressively at both tables pre and post. Most of the time, people tried to win the pot, for better or for worse.
Yeah. I thought the biggest mistakes I saw at Justin's table were sizing errors, particularly pre-flop. There was appropriate squeezes coming through, but for too small.
Oh, right.
There were 3 bets that were coming through, but oftentimes for too big, right? So the early position versus early position, instead of giving yourself the opportunity to have a bit of a linear range, it would just come through like the 10 big blind 3 bet,
Yeah.
which is a bit on the large side, but no ante. But these are all very easily corrected.
I would say, and it's not to a fault, of course, it's just more so ignorance, which isn't a bad thing. It's just like lack of knowledge. When it comes to sizing schemes from the intuitive standpoint, there's a lot of spots where you want to end up sizing appropriately, especially if you're in position size for 3 streets in some spots, if you're out of position size for 2. And most people will get the 2 street sizes in 3 and 4 bet pots more correct because it feels more natural to put in bets that are like half pot plus. But when you're playing 4 bet pots, like half pot rarely comes in unless you're the out of position player on a scary board.
Right.
And then you're playing these weird SPR constructions where you're in position, but you're finding turn jams, or you're in position and you're finding almost turn jams, leaving SPRs a 0.2 behind. And it's like, well, there's probably ways to construct these bet sizes a little bit better to generate more EV.
I agree with that, but I also think that that's like kind of cart in front of the horse. I would say that one of your biggest blind spots being in a position to lead and teach groups like this is not being able to take yourself back to their shoes. You're just like starting way too far into the study, and it is often going to lose your audience. Like I walked in on commentary and you just were like dropping 2E3, and it's like we haven't even touched sizing yet.
Sure.
Right? Like today was just a general
2E.
Today was just a general overview where we're talking about like broad stroke construction, how game theory functions, what the principles are, SPR, position, range advantage, and things of that nature. When you start to get granular and say like, oh, he went for a hat pot size here, but I would prefer a 2E size of like 110%. We're kind of like cutting off our nose to spite our face at that point, right?
I'm sure the majority of these students, majority that haven't been to the academy at all, probably have never studied like geometric sizing.
Agreed. And even if they had, or even if instead of saying 2E or 3, you just use the pot percentage,
Right.
We haven't clarified the difference yet, right? So we haven't really clarified why full pot is better than half pot in this particular instance. And that's not to say that we shouldn't be critical of sizings. Of course, we always need to kind of throw in, oh, by the way, this is a bigger bet spot type of thing. But like I was saying in my feedback, it's better to be general early in the feedback and then specific like by the time we get to day 3, because the general takeaway is, should I bet or should I not in this particular setting on day 1, right? It's kind of like leading a horse to water type of thing. And for the most part, I think that they critically thought their ways through whether or not they should be betting in spots. I think that they did a relatively good job overall of betting. And I think that's always true of Academy attendees. I think that they come in and they find the right opportunities to bet. They just may not necessarily find the right hands. And then you get a little bit concerned that they're not checking enough, right? I think that that's like one of the bigger pitfalls that I see from new attendees who come through, is that they feel like in a learning environment like this, they have to play hyper aggressive, and they just forget that they have a checking range. So all of a sudden, every flop gets c-bet, every 3-bet pot gets c-bet. You know what I mean? And the only time that checks come through is like they 3-bet the ace-5 suited and it comes queen jack 9 rainbow.
Yeah.
And they're just like, oh, this is the give up. You know, this is the one where I check, but it's like, okay, well, what good hands do we have here? Almost never anything.
Yeah, it seems like there's definitely just more of an emotional attachment to winning pots you're invested in, because it makes it seem as if there's potential, I guess maybe like there's a skill gap, or it's like I want to prove that I'm good and here's how, by putting in correct bet sizes and winning pots, where in reality sometimes like true understanding comes to check folds.
Right.
Or block folds.
Yeah.
Or finding a raise with a good hand versus just raising because you feel like it. And a lot of it comes from the nuance which you learn at some point, but that's kind of par for the course for trying to make an impression early.
Yeah. Well, Lamana, you've been to 34 of these now. What do you think are some of the most common takeaways that you see, kind of like, call it the average student?
I think the main thing, like the takeaways from people, is there's something switches in their brain where it's like they've been thinking about poker a certain way for their entire life, and then they come here and see like, oh, here's a new way to think about something that I've never thought about. I never thought about like, you know, starting with the range of hands and then moving forward, and you know, like you said, like a lot of people think of like image first,
right,
before they think of actual, like, you know,
I think that might be the number one pitfall,
right?
And I say that pretty confidently, not just because it's something that we have to combat against every time that we run one of these things, but we've had a host of women come through. I think something like 20% of our academy attendees have been women, and across the board with near 100% consistency, they are very sensitive to their image. And it's not always consistent in the sense that they'll say something like, oh, I feel picked on because I'm a woman, or something of that vein. It can go either way, right? Like some will say, I get a lot of extra folds because I'm a woman. Others will say like, I get guys who punt off to me because I'm a woman and they want to like make sure that they never lose to a woman. And I know that inherently those things are absolutely true.
Right.
But the bias that we have to fight through is that matters, right? And that's the difficult thing to try to convey to people, is that even though people may be responding to you specifically based off of a presumption of image or what they presume to be true of your playstyle or whatever, the fastest way to capitalize is not to figure out the counter to what it is that they're doing, but to figure out ways that you can just protect yourself across all boards. That way you don't have to guess. Because if ever they stop doing that thing, you now stop making money.
Right. Yeah, it's funny because people will like, they really do, you know, it's well, in my game this happens, or against me this happens, or this, like the game is the game, right? The math is the same no matter what game you play in, you know, like, so like I think for people to see it like broken down to like, put all that aside, right? Here's what you're supposed to do when it comes to, you know, GTO, whatever you want to call it. Here's the principles that you need to learn. And then you start, once you can understand that foundation, that's when you can, you know, branch off and say, okay, well, this player is doing this, so I do this.
Right.
But if you don't know the baseline, then how can you you know, deviate off of it?
I think the best way to conceptualize this is that when we're talking statistics, there's always signal and noise, right? And what we mean by that is that there is data that we can rely upon as being relatively consistent and indicative of something occurring, right? And then there's data that may mirror that, but it's largely just noise, right? It's too small of a sample, or it's unreliable or unstable for some reason, right? When people come in and they are speaking specifically to what happens to them, they don't understand that they're seeing it through their own biased eyes.
Right.
Yeah, most of the reflections are reflections of self.
Right. And if you had asked somebody else in their game the exact same question about that person, they may give you a different answer. So what they don't understand is that they're not qualified to call this information signal yet. right? I'm not doubting anybody's experience. When a woman comes through and says like, I get picked on a lot because I'm a woman, or I get a lot of bluffs through because I'm a woman, I'm sure that to some degree that's true.
Yeah.
And there is a signal in there.
Sure.
What I'm trying to basically focus in on, though, is that at this point, without the true signal, which is the math, the game theory of it all, without having a deep comprehension of that, this all just becomes noise, right? And once we have a deep understanding of baseline strategy, to the point that you made of how this game operates in a normal, well thought out, logical arena, until we have that baseline, that noise is just going to get in our way and confuse us.
It's like saying, I think somebody bluffs against me too much, and then you don't have the theoretical baseline of how much should be bluffed or what hands should be shown, and then you see hands that don't exist from a theoretical perspective, maybe hands too wide in a range construction, or a hand that should probably check because it's too much value to value bet, or to bluff, sorry. And then when you see these, you're like, okay, I have my fundamental baseline. I know this hand does not bluff in theory, which makes it an over bluff.
Right.
Not just, I think they're bluffing me because they keep putting in bets and I keep folding on the turn.
Right. Now you have a true signal to go off of.
Right.
And the easiest way to challenge this whenever people do come with their own kind of bias is when they say that in my game, this always happens to me kind of thing. Then you just refute it by saying, okay, then always do the counter.
Right. What's the counter? Then do it.
If somebody is always bluffing you, always call.
Right.
Right. And then watch them torch money and then come back and say like, I'm calling a bunch and I'm losing. Why? That's because they're not bluffing you nearly enough.
Right. Well,
and you were under a misconception.
It's kind of not a bad strategy when it comes to making somebody, or kind of guiding the path to realizing that the always and nevers can't be true in both instances.
Well, but what we're distilling always and never down to is too frequent. So if somebody says like, this person always bluffs me, what they're saying is that they bluff me too much. And it's like, well, if they're bluffing you even a little bit too much, then you can literally always call.
Yep.
And if you just always call and aren't making money, then you're just wrong.
Yeah.
You're incorrect that they're bluffing you too often.
It's a weird thing to kind of have that confidence of a theory being what you think is happening from an opponent's standpoint, but also be unwilling to test it with the proper counter.
Yeah.
Where some people will come to you and say, oh, they bluffed me too much. And then you'll say, okay, just call range then. And they say, oh, but that's too scary.
Yeah.
It's like, well, how me no understand? It does not compute.
There's a big lack of, I would say this is one of the second biggest challenges that we as instructors have to overcome. And probably one of the second most common things that I see amongst the people who attend, as well as like other beginners who may come in contact with us for coaching, is that there is an internal fear of losing pots.
Yes.
And attached to that is some level of pain to losing money.
Right.
So this manifests in risk aversion, where it's just like the game gets broken down. One of the first lessons we give is that you learn this game through the lens of value. So I asked somebody today, one of our students has only been playing for 2.5 years. And I go, you're young enough that you can remember day one of playing this game. How was it introduced to you? And he goes, by hand rankings. And I go, okay, so like basically royal flush down the top or down the high card. He goes, yeah, that's how I learned the game initially. I go, when did they introduce to you the hand rankings of bluffs? He goes, they haven't. I'm like, exactly. So you've only learned this game through the lens of what beats what,
Right.
which in turn means that whenever you're put into a calling decision, you're deferring to the hand ranking chart and you're saying, how strong does my hand have to be to put money into a pot here?
What tier list does my hand equate to for my prize?
Right.
Where in reality, sometimes top pair is just better than some three of a kind.
Maybe,
Right.
but it's not even getting that granular. It's just understanding that with the price being laid, there's almost always going to be times where you can't be restricted to top pair plus, right? So
Sure.
you just have to call a Y with a
Right.
wider range of hands. You can't just fold tens on an ace high
Right.
board because somebody bet.
One pair is not created equal.
Correct.
Right. You have deuces versus ace X. Like they're both one pair.
Right.
But now you have to figure out in what spots what's better than what, depending on action.
Correct. Yeah. So I think that that's like a huge hurdle for people who are just entering into study to kind of get over and see how high the equity is of some of these hands that they consider to be really weak.
Right. This hand's really bad, but in reality, it's actually pretty good.
Right, like 2 overs and a gut shot. To see that has like
It's a good hand.
50% equity.
It's a good hand.
Right? Like to see that like second pair versus a range bet is like 65% equity in some spots. Yeah. You know, like to see that these hands have so much value will recondition their mind and take them out of the hierarchy of just the hand rankings. And then begin to understand that like there needs to be an inverse hand ranking, right? You need to be pulling bluffs from somewhere.
Right.
And it can't just be like, I flopped a huge draw.
It's a weird thing when it comes to poker being the game with the bluffing aspect being part of it, where if you look at like a blackjack hand ranking chart, you know, there's no bluffing in a game like blackjack.
Right.
But in a game like poker, you need to know what the value thresholds are for hands that win a showdown, but you also need to realize you can win without actually having these hands like having them in your hand, I suppose.
Yeah.
Like just having the hand strength of those in your hand. Because in that sense, bluffing doesn't get taught. I didn't get taught bluffing until like a year and a half through. I thought it was good to not bluff.
Right. Of course.
Like everyone does. Like, why would you do that?
And in a lot of pools.
If you get called, you lose.
Yeah, exactly. Why would you do that? Like, I felt like a sense of pride of like always having like top pairs and like sneak checking top pairs. Now I look back, I'm like, no, I just played bad, but I didn't know I was playing bad.
Right.
How can you know?
Imagine being in a 100 game where half the people still think that. I literally get ridiculed for like bluffing and bluff catching
keep
on
playing.
the regular.
Good game.
Where did you learn how to bluff, Berkey?
I think
at a young age.
I think somebody gave me the opposite hand rankings.
Yeah,
Someone
gave you. Yeah.
No, I think like the first deck I got, instead of it being ranked like Royal Flush down to high card,
It was high card.
it was
to Royal
like
Flush.
it was just a trash card where it was just like, okay, here's the worst no pair you can have, and here's the best no pair you can have, and these are the only hands that you're ever gonna make.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think somewhere along the lines,
God forbid you ever made a pair.
yeah, I think somewhere along the lines, I had like a tremendous fear of just never making a real hand. And I was just like, well, I need to find another way to make money in this game, because it's clearly not going to be by just making the best hand and value betting it. That's really hard.
Yeah.
Like,
It is.
It's hard to make hands.
yeah, I think, I don't know. To me, the way poker was introduced to me was, it was very much a prideful thing to get one over on your peers, right?
Like you felt good bluffing your friends?
Oh my God, the best. It was the best feeling in the world. I lived for it. And I loathed being bluffed. Like if I got shown a bluff in a reasonably sized pot, my whole face would turn red. My ears would be on fire.
Oh my God. I know about that. The back of neck burn.
Yeah, you just feel like somebody just like, took a shit in your shoe. Like, how dare you?
Yeah.
This was my pot to win and you just stole it from me. And then I realized I could steal back.
Yeah.
And I could do it more often.
And you realize you could check raise.
Yeah, so it's like, I don't know. It's such an integral part of my character. And to be fair, I do think people need to lean into their personalities when creating strategy, right? Like there are going to be red liners, there are going to be blue liners, and it's going to be predicated upon your comfort with risk.
Sure. It's interesting. Yeah. Some people are going to lean more one way or the other, but the baseline should still be learned regardless.
Of course.
Like have the theory and then like find out where you are, because the first year I got coached by a friend of mine, like it was very, very clear that his plan for me was to figure out the value thresholds and try to get value better than other people, which is a skill. Like blue lining is certainly a skill.
Yeah.
Right? Knowing that someone's range is weak and they're only going to call versus a block or half pot, or they're actually inelastic and going to call 4x pot.
Right.
There's definitely huge skill involved with blue line, where nowadays people are like so like red line, like they see this red line, they're like, oh my.
Well, that's because if you have the red line, you don't need to be as meticulous with the blue line. You could just 4x pot it all because they don't believe you anymore.
You don't need to, you don't need to be as good, but your win rate will be higher if you know how to do both of them very well, and people forsake one for the other.
I guess what I'm getting at is that they work hand in hand very closely.
You can't increase one without losing somewhere else.
Perhaps, but what I'm saying is that by having a high red line, you inherently will earn more value whenever you have hands that show down.
Sure.
And the inverse becomes true. If you have a high blue line, you inherently are going to have to size differently than if you were a red liner.
Right.
You're just not, you have a little added element of fold equity every time you put a bet out. if you're a hardcore blue liner.
Correct.
Because your frequencies are just very different.
Yes.
The red liners' frequencies are going to gravitate much, much more in the polar direction of betting.
Yep.
The blue liners' frequencies are going to be much closer to neutral.
And most people, by default, do the fear-based lens of blue liners.
Correct. Totally
So
agree with
because
that.
when they're blue liners, you now, as someone that knows that they're blue liners, are allowed to make deviations from 0 EV.
Right.
Because it's not 0 EV anymore.
Guapo, you're not that far removed from being somebody who might stumble through the doors here. What do you feel between that past self and you now? What do you think has changed the most? Like what's the one thing that you can look back on and say like that was one of the biggest errors that I was consistently making?
This is just as recent as like 6 months ago, is that I just did not have a check back range. So in other words,
yeah.
if I checked back, I just didn't have it.
Right.
6 months ago.
Yeah, I'm not kidding.
No. I mean, like every couple weeks, I'm learning something new about the way that I play strategy.
No. I'm just saying, like, this seems like a really
Yeah,
big
this is a
piece.
sore thumb type
like,
of
this
thing.
is
Yeah.
this is a pretty big spot.
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
Like,
This
yeah.
one cuts deep.
Yeah, this was a light bulb moment for sure.
Checking back flops.
This was him answering the question that you just didn't listen to.
No, I just did like because when it comes to like the way that I see improvement in poker and so many other spots, is like I thought it was just gonna be a more recent answer.
That's not the question I asked. I'm asking like we're asking like what the most basic errors are that play.
And to me, that seems
Yeah.
like a pretty
sure.
big one. Yeah.
Right.
For
Yeah,
sure.
it is.
Mm-hmm.
I understand. I get it.
What do you think? What do you think you were number one giving up as far as like general strategy goes? Whenever you didn't have a protected check back, and then how do you think that's helped adjust your strategy since?
Say that one more time.
So what do you think you were giving up in overall strategy by not checking back?
I was basically letting my opponents know that I didn't have anything, that I wasn't able to check back, the top of my range or at least top pair.
Pretty
or-
exploitable, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, so the irony is that it's less exploitable than you think when you're actually going through the check back line. Like, yeah, of course you're capped and you don't really have much, but that's a pretty tight range that checks back because you're not going to have a lot of give ups when you already have the aggression.
And what's odd is that I was able to notice that from my opponents and not apply it to myself. In
Right.
other words, when I was playing in these games, if anyone ever checked back, I was just firing. It didn't
'cause you
matter,
were
it didn't matter what
projecting
I
it,
had.
'cause
It
you
didn't matter
knew-
what my suits were. It's just like, oh, they checked back. Like, I'm just going to win this pot.
Yeah, probably
and they
because
would win.
Probably because like, well, that's what I do. When I do that, I don't have anything, and then they bet, and I just fold. So you were thinking, I think that's maybe how your line of thinking was like, right?
Yeah.
So the irony of what I'm trying to say is that I think the way that you were most exploitable is through your actual c-bet range. And I don't know if you recognize that or not,
Right.
but basically
Yeah.
if your c-bet range is most hands minus like the stone give ups, what will actually end up trending is, or at least in my opinion, what I think will end up happening is you'll lack the ability to find future street bluffs on certain runouts because you'll lean so heavily, you'll gravitate towards so heavily to hands that have equity. And now what that will result in is you won't have enough river bluffs in a lot of spots, which will then force you to value bet tighter. So if I had to guess, without having seen any of your past hands, I would imagine you didn't value bet river thin enough,
No.
and I would imagine that you weren't bluffing river enough.
That's for sure.
And that's all predicated off of how you constructed flop. Like if you had just c-bet range on flop, instead of having a weak check back, you would still be able to find thinner value bets and better bluffs on the river because you had more hands to select from. Make sense?
Yeah, and it also made it really resonated with me when you were talking about looking at poker and learning poker from a value standpoint. Like obviously, I think everyone could have benefited more from learning how to bluff first,
Right.
and then learning value. Like it's just such an integral part of the game.
Yeah, I think that's true. Being able to look back on it now, what do you think? What do you think the greatest adjustment outside of having a protected flop c-bet range, like globally across your strategy? What do you think like the biggest adjustment has been since?
Well, the check back range, and then also bet sizing. That's always been a big leak for me.
Right.
Recognizing boards, understanding how ranges interact with one another, what the formation is, like how me opening from the low jack versus someone who's calling out of the small blind versus someone who's calling out of the small blind when I open from the button.
Yeah.
Just knowing how those ranges interact and how that affects my c-betting strategy was pretty big as well.
I think that's kind of what Landon's speaking to, where that's the eternal process. That's the one that never changes. Like every day we get a little bit sharper at our sizing. We get a little bit sharper in our frequencies, in our hand selection, in our comprehension of range versus range. That's the never ending process, right? Like there's never a day where you just wake up and you go, cut off first big blind, mastered it.
Yeah, you're never going to have that. It's the weird in between of understanding that there is the theoretical baseline and then trying to improve win rate by trying to become the best practical player you can be.
Yeah.
And a good example of that in most spots is population out of position doesn't check raise enough.
Right.
It's like once you have the sample to realize that this is a true statement, and I've played enough hands, I've seen the check raise frequency of the global pool. It's nowhere close to where the theoretically is acceptable. So now it's like, okay, how do I adjust my strategy knowing extra information that I have, not from a concrete standpoint of each individual player, but from a global heuristic standpoint. And now you realize, oh, if they don't do this, this response is actually the correct one. And before, like, there's a lot of the ego involved in saying, okay, I know that the sim is supposed to check raise 15% and the range looks like this, but then you like say, okay, you're just coping because their check raise range is actually 5% and their call is much more protected than what is theoretically approved.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing that happened, I guess, in my eyes, like last year after having like enough screaming matches with you about it, where you're like, hey, maybe people don't play like this. I'm like, oh, I guess you're right.
That's where I think like a lot of good players fall into the trap, is that they get caught in the mechanism of wanting to try to perfect a formation, wanting to try to wake up one day and say, I've perfected cutoff first big blind, rather than recognizing when they get like the 80-20 rule applies. Once you get like 80% comprehension of cutoff first big blind, you're so much better served now moving on to the deviations that will apply player to player. And just practically executing in a way that allows you to exploit their mistakes, because they do not understand big blind versus cutoff defense at the 80% level.
Yeah, poker's not as copy-paste as you would think it is, especially in a practical realm, which is good.
Yeah, it's funny the way it just cycles, right? Like when we had a ton of the RTA scares and a lot of the online cheat scandals and everything else in like 2019, and the introduction of GTO Wizard and all of this technology seemed to be moving forward to the degree where it was like, okay, for me to be good at this game, it clearly means that I'm going to have to figure out how to copy and paste a solver strategy onto my environment. It's so wild to see now, like 3 or 4 years later, it come full circle where the games are kind of evolving a bit. Stacks are getting deeper. They're adding 7 deuce get, whatever. There are adjustments being made that make it so fundamentally not true. Freestyle poker is alive and well, more so now than maybe it's ever been since Black Friday.
Yeah, the people that are cheating in like a very specific way, and they're not winning the most.
Right, and they're also doing it in very specific environments.
Right.
They're it's not just restricted to RTA. Like collusion goes a long way. It's going to have a much higher win rate. Like knowledge of the deck will always supersede any sort of strategy that we can execute through
It's
solvers.
like, would you rather play RTA or would you rather know half the cards in the deck that are gone?
Right. It's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know that I have any other like major ones that stick out to me. I think everything else starts to become a little bit individualized. But
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of most of it, at least when it comes to mistakes made, and it's not just about low stakes. I think it's just about poker in general. Comes from a lack of having the mentality to accept that you're allowed to lose.
That's hard.
There's a lot. Yeah, it's tough. But once you realize that when you call certain bet sizes, or even like you call big bet sizes, and you realize that you have a hand that makes a lot of logical sense to call for good reasons, and you see those reasons exist, and giving yourself the permission to lose.
Yeah.
And lose just being, okay, I'm going to call. So I give the guy credit for bluffing if he's possible bluffing, and if he bluffed me, I win, and if he doesn't, I lose, and that's okay if my framework is correct.
Right.
There's a difference from having the ego framework of I want to call because I want to see his hand because I don't believe him, versus from a baseline perspective, my hand has these properties which do very well as a call, and I'm going to trust these properties to make my decision. There's a difference between the ego-based decision making and the knowledge-based decision making.
Yeah.
And the closer you get to knowledge-based decision making, the more you allow yourself to lose, which in turn allows you to win more.
Right.
Because now you're giving yourself the permission to lose. You're meant from like even a soft skill standpoint, your mental game doesn't break down once you bluff, catch, and lose.
Yeah, it really shouldn't be 1 or 2 pots that define a session, right? 1 or 2 pots should just swing you one way or the other, but it should be the margins that really define a session.
Right, like the spots was like, oh, like maybe I could find a check raise here.
Yeah.
Like on a flop.
Yeah.
Or maybe I could find a turn lead. Like these are spots that are going to give you more win rate as well as allow you to be more creative as well, that are much more important than the did I call with ace 10 on ace jack 8 7 4 and he showed me ace jack.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, how bad can it be in that sort of instance? Where in the other spots, it's like, oh, let me try to find ways to get better, not let me try to find ways to lose less.
Yeah. I think that's really thing. And honestly, like, kind of just comes down to the mindset of if you don't know, gambling is a little bit okay.
Yeah, you're allowed to experiment. Like, I've just had more spots where, especially if I'm playing MTTs, and you realize that leads are definitely involved in strategy.
Mm-hmm.
I went through fucking 3 years of not playing turn leads or like flop leads because I was like, oh, you just check dark.
Right.
Like, you just check dark turn. You just check dark river. Where you look at a machine, especially now when you have AI tools, you see that, like, the machine doesn't just say pure green on certain turns.
Yeah.
Well, I noticed you checking dark a couple times today.
So not that it was checking dark, is that every time I got called, I was out of position. So for me, I just have a very simplified strategy that if I'm out of position in single raise pots,
Right.
like it's not a huge mistake.
Yeah,
to
but
check
then,
100.
but I'm not saying it is. But why would you ever check dark? Because now you're telling your opponent that I don't have a lead range here.
Well, I'm also under the assumption that they just know that I'm supposed to be checking here like 99% of the
That's
time.
not true, though.
That's not true. They don't know. You're maybe they make that assumption, but maybe they're not. But if when you check dark, then now they just know.
But that assumption isn't even true.
Yeah.
What is
Yeah,
it?
like a good
But you're
example.
checking 99%.
Right. Yeah.
like board is 10
they
6.
don't know that.
Board's 10 6 4
Right.
turns a 6. You don't check dark.
Oh, he's just
Yeah.
talking about even flops.
I just think I just don't think you should ever check dark. Even if you do plan to check 100, you should never check dark because you're just conveying information to your
Well,
opponent.
hold on. Let's talk about that real quick. So am I incorrect in saying that in single raise pots, when I'm out of position, it's not a huge mistake to just be checking 100% of the time?
It's not a huge mistake, but it's not a pure check in theory.
It's not winning the most money.
Mm-hmm.
So by
There are leads.
by telegraphing that you're checking 100% by checking dark, you've now told your opposition that you never have bets,
Right.
Okay.
which means they know you're playing a simplified strategy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Whereas if you check in the light, they think that you had to have chosen your checks.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
To-
Yeah.
today
I
you
noticed
did
that,
one?
and I wanted to bring that up because I guess I didn't have to bring it up on the podcast. But
Like today
like
you
I
did
just
one.
thought of it. Yeah.
It was under the gun versus button, and you check dark under the gun, where you will have
A lot of
quite
bets.
a lot of bets.
Especially king high ace high.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's like kind of the problem with simplifying out of position is like playing pure check is that you probably miss out on 3 streets in a lot of scenarios. So a great example is like the 9-5-3 rainbow board. You get to play big better check.
Yeah.
And whenever you have overpairs that just pure check, you don't face the c-bet a lot from in position. It's not like in position c-bet's 80% here. It's closer to like half.
Okay.
And now, rather than you getting potential 3 streets by just setting up 3E if you have like kings, now you just have to play a bunch of turns.
Now, is it naive to think that I'm mitigating that because I'm check raising a lot more than I think the pool is?
Well, I think you're recouping some EV there, but you're also just check raising versus a range that isn't well curated in its stabs. So some people will overstab, some people will understab. Against understabbers, you're going to get torched.
Yeah, it just depends on the pool that you're playing in and the amount of win rate that is available. Because once you play against better competition, you're trying to put people in spots that are tougher that you know better than them. And if you're playing like check nodes, most people kind of are aware of the check nodes out of position versus in position.
Yeah, it is the most common strategy, yeah.
Yeah, like I didn't even know for a very long time, like let's say boards like 7-7-5, like low jack button, like you have B75 as your flop size.
Yeah.
Like you choose big bet because why would you use quarter?
Right.
And for a long time when I was playing micro stakes, I just go like quarter pot and you'd get floated and then you'd check the turn and then they would bluff and then you would fold and you're like,
Yeah.
why did I even bet this? But you didn't even know that wasn't even the right option.
Yeah, there isn't a lot of small betting out of position, which makes sense. You're trying to lower SPR. You're trying to play all
Well,
in
you don't bet a
pots.
lot, right? So
Correct.
when you don't bet a lot, you usually
That's a general rule.
a
of thumb.
general rule.
Yeah.
It's not right, of course, but
Not always applicable.
It's
but
almost like when you choose in the other instance, like you're so scared of them having a response, you have to go small.
right.
Like the button big blind 7-6-4 when they check.
Yeah.
It's like I can't go big because they have good hands, but if I have a
Yeah.
set, I still want to go small.
Right.
Give
or
him,
like
give him bait, give him cheese.
Or if you're out of position and the turn flush card comes through,
Yep.
like that's kind of a neutral card. You're not really going to just start bombing.
Yeah.
Justin, today was the first time I think I've ever seen you actually play.
That is true, right?
Played
Wow.
You played well. You played well. I don't know.
I'm not
really-
surprised.
I mean, I don't know.
Surprise.
I'm not surprised. I'm also not
Not
surprised,
not
I guess.
surprised.
What got you to this point? Like, you've been playing for how long?
I'm an OG like you. I started in 2003.
Are you serious?
Yes.
What?
Yeah.
How old are you?
I am 32.
That's not old enough to have started in 2003.
I was
Yeah,
13.
Jesus Christ.
13.
13 with money. I was a young Landon before Landon.
Okay,
It's the person. I was 13 with money.
I was hoping
love
that
it.
this might come out because this was going to be my next question. How much gambling have you done?
I actually I started playing pool at that time, and then Moneymaker came out.
Oh,
and I
you
was
were a
like,
hustler.
yeah. So poker is better.
Yeah, well, of course.
That's how I came up, and that's what I was gonna get to. Is like how I learned how to bluff was watching ESPN in like 2005, seeing like Phil Ivey. And
Yeah.
like, oh, this is cool. This guy,
Yeah.
this guy's a gangster.
You're like, yo, this guy
Wins without hands all the time.
This guy keeps putting money in
I
with
wanna do
nothing.
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's how I learned. So I was
Yeah.
wondering how Berkey learned. And Isildur came out. He was my hero in 2009. And
Yeah, I don't know that I ever
My
like.
hero.
It's tough because I don't know that I ever like fell into necessarily idolizing someone or trying to mimic my play style after somebody. I read Super Systems, and at the time it was for sure the most aggressive strategy that you could find, and I just gravitated towards the aggressive aspect of like you flop a draw and you just find a way to get it in.
right.
And I think that's why I asked if you ever did any gambling, because I'm like vehemently against gambling in general.
Actually, me too. I don't gamble.
I don't sports bet. I don't anything I don't have control over. I've never really had the desire to delve into. But finding areas to gamble within the game of poker where I've convinced myself I have an element of control, I gravitated towards immediately. Like that's why I was the guy who went broke a lot, because I didn't care about Kelly criteria. I didn't care about bankroll management or anything along those lines. I cared. Like I got the gambler's mindset, the gambler's high of chasing the big scores and wanting those wins. And it, to some regard, was predicated upon through reading Super System, where it's just like, hey, you flop a flush draw. Fuck these guys.
Yeah.
Play the small cards when they have the big ones. Fuck these guys. And I'm like, yeah, let's do that.
Play the backdoors because when you turn the draw, then you can bluff.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, this sounds great. Like this is
then,
a handbook for how to just put a bunch of money in without much of a hand and win pots.
Yeah.
And I like winning pots a lot.
The next step after like bluff with the backdoors, because you can turn them if to bluff if you turn a card, is bluff with no suit. So if the backdoor comes in, you don't have anything, and it's even
Now
more
you can
likely
bluff
they're
for three
folding.
streets. Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly.
And it's true. The solver agrees, because once you realize you don't want to have the cards that they check, call,
Right.
fold, these cards are now good for you, and that's why they're low frequency turn, high frequency river.
So outside of poker, you didn't really do much degenning?
When I was early, maybe at 21, I played casino games, but after that, no. And I never really got a high off of poker, like degenning. But
Where, or I guess we'll go two steps. First, when did you move to Vegas?
I moved here in 2019.
Oh, wow, you're recent.
Recent, yeah.
So what were you doing prior to that?
I was playing underground games in Hawaii.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
That Guy Liberté game.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a wild games.
What was like your peak success?
There's no peak. It's all downhill.
Bro went from 13 with money to 32 in poor. He's down horrendous.
Yeah.
He's like, 13 was my peak.
Yeah.
Like, stake wise, how big was the biggest you played?
25.50.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty big.
At
I mean,
13.
Yeah, 13.
and then like you mostly played online prior to Black Friday?
Prior to Black Friday, I was a full tilt player.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cash or tournaments?
Heads up cash.
Wow. You really were in the ring.
I told you, Isildur was my hero.
That's no joke, man. Are you gonna keep up with it? Like, are you happy to still be grinding?
Yeah, I love it. I don't think I'm ever gonna stop. It's all I know how to do besides beat you at pickleball. So.
He's the flying chalk.
Listen, I never claimed to be.
Oh man, that's
Bro.
great.
I never claimed to be a singles player. Okay, I'm an excellent doubles complement. You know,
A compliment. You
Yeah.
try to take over the court with me.
no, I tried to go. No,
that doesn't jive with the personality at all. I
We've
can't
literally
see
shown
that.
videos where you're like taking over the whole court.
the middle, man. Just leave me the middle and handle the rest. You know,
Yeah.
you guys get so goddamn greedy out there. Everyone wants to bang. You know,
I think I'm gonna get into pickleball. I keep saying
You
this.
have to. You
Yeah.
have to.
Andy said he wants to get back into it.
Andy,
I meant to respond to him because he messaged me and he heard the podcast about me saying, he's like, are you serious? Because if you are, then he's like, I'll come with.
I can't
get
believe
back in
Andy's
there.
not a regular with us. I get
Yeah.
it. He got busy. He had 2 kids.
I mean,
That's
he's
a little
got
bit
a
tough.
life. You know, he's got like an actual real life.
I understand, but
Right?
like,
Not this fantasy world that we live in.
but like he, honestly, Andy to pickleball is, at least to me anyway, is you to poker. Like in the beginning, no one was more passionate about poker than you,
Right.
And no one was more passionate about pickleball than Andy.
Yeah.
Yet in both instances, I'm still fucking here, baby. I'm the man in the arena, and you guys are on the sidelines watching. I don't understand how that happened, other than I have no other responsibilities.
Don't die on the
Maybe.
sidelines.
That has a lot to
That's
do with
right. Don't die on the sidelines.
Yeah.
Keep getting up.
So I asked about gambling for a specific reason. Do you play any fantasy sports?
I do not. But
Okay.
My friends do.
Okay. Well, we this will be the first time I've ever done it. I kind of drafted one last year, but it was with the aid of Sharp. We have a little best ball contest that's going to be coming up this week.
Oh, I'm in.
Nice.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'll
I've
get
never
you
done
involved.
best ball, so I'm excited for it.
Me either. I'm pretty excited for the draft process. So there's a lot of different strategies out there. Dan Zach's obviously super sharp. Might have to hit him up and see if he wants to come on and kind of like grade our drafts and stuff. But we're going to draft over the weekend. And I'm seeing these wild things. So here's the thing about best ball. You can put in a massive amount of volume as far as like entering the contest. It's similar to daily fantasy in that regard, right? So you might be able to get like, let's say 100 lineups out. And you obviously want some parity across your lineups to give yourself a better chance to win. So there are a lot of like wild strategies out there where people will take like a low percentage of their lineups and make a 6 tight end stack. So, you know, I haven't actually looked at it, but I assume for the wide receiver slot, you can draft wide receiver or tight end.
It must be if you're playing 6 tight ends.
Right. And there are like some stacks that are getting created. You know, the tight end's becoming a bigger position now in today's game. We're seeing a lot of the George Kittles emerge.
I can't name 6 tight ends that I'd run on my team.
Well, that's because they all seem to have their year and then fall off. Like the Travis Kelce's of the world.
You got
are the
Travis
only-
Kelce.
He's the only one
right.
who's like the
Mark
only.
Andrews is pretty good.
Yeah, but like Kelsey's been good for almost a decade,
Kelsey's
right?
the man.
Yeah,
when it comes to tight end, he's the guy.
It went Gronk then him,
Right.
Right, but in
Yeah.
between all of that, there were a lot of other like flashes in the pan.
Remember Antonio Gates? He was the
Tony
great-
Gonzalez.
He was-
Well, those
Legends.
are, you're talking a little older,
Yeah.
you know, closer to Hall of Fame. But like, you know, you had the I can't even remember his name
Jimmy
now. from-
Graham.
Well, Jimmy,
Yeah.
you're still like dating yourself a bit. I'm thinking more recent, where you know George Kittle for a number of years was
George
the number
Kittle,
one tight
he's
end.
still good.
He's
He's
still
just-
good,
yeah.
but he fell off a bit.
Hawkinson.
Hawkinson's decent.
Kittle was really good last year.
Yeah. Well, was he? He was
Towards
sharing the
end-
ball a lot.
Well, he scored a lot of touchdowns, probably more than he should have. But when Purdy came in, he
Yeah. The
he
first
threw
half
a
of the
lot-
season, I don't think he had a
Right.
good.
Cameron Brate, good tight end.
Meh.
Yeah.
You're like tier 2,
Yeah.
tier 3. But
Get your
like,
Florida people out of here.
what's his face from the Raiders who just got traded?
Darren Waller.
Waller.
Yeah, he was a stud, and then you know he fell off last year, and
He
now
didn't
it's a
fall
little-
off. He got hurt, and like
Well,
he just
well,
like
he
never
fell
fell
off of his leg
He never
because
fell off,
he-
and he's probably going to be really, really good this year. He's
He
actually
might
a
be.
really good pick.
got
He might,
Kelsey
yeah,
Plum.
he might be.
He might be. Maybe
he's got
he is.
Danny Dimes thrown to him
Right.
now.
Yeah, hey, maybe he's going to be great. We don't know. But the whole point is, like, you could definitely find 6 between Kelsey, Kittle, Freiermuth.
I
you
know.
Maybe take
Yeah.
a flyer on Washington. Who knows? You know, you got Waller out there.
Dulcich.
Somebody else just signed a huge contract at tight end.
Hawkinson.
Yes. It was Hawkinson.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, there seem to be more marquee tight ends now than maybe ever since the mid 90s. You know, if you want to go all the way back to the Shannon Sharp and the Todd Heap days, it's always fucking Baltimore, man. They just they breed tight ends the way we breed linebackers.
Yeah.
You know, and now they have Andrews.
Right.
That's pretty much a stud.
I think it's like, it's kind of like, yeah, Kelsey definitely is S tier, and then Mark Andrews is like he's like in a class of his own. There's like Kelsey's definitely better than him, but there's really nobody in his class, and then everybody's like a little bit worse than him. Well, he kind of like stands alone, and then you have that group that you mentioned, like the Wallers, the Hawkinsons, hopefully Freiermuth.
the thing with Andrews is it's so dependent upon the offense that year, right? So it's number one, they haven't had much of a receiving core for the last couple of years. Number two, it was hit or miss whether or not Lamar was playing.
Right.
So like with a healthy Lamar, with an Odell in there to take some ball share,
and then I think coaching staff has a lot to do, right? You want the offensive coordinator to be someone who likes throwing the ball to the. You want the quarterback to like to throw the ball to the tight end, and also the design plays,
the scheme around it
for this player, and then have the
scrambling quarterbacks and big tight ends go hand in hand.
Yeah.
The Mahomes and Kelsey's, that's no real shock there. Seeing Lamar and Andrews, that's not really that much of a surprise. Anyway, whole point is the 6 tight end stack might not be so bad. I don't know. I remember the first time I saw somebody tweet about it, they were memeing on it about like what a big joke it was. And now I'm seeing people with like 3% ownership where they have 6 tight ends.
The strategy in fantasy football it's amazing how it's evolved and how it's changed.
Yeah.
Before it was like, why would you ever draft a quarterback early? It's so dumb. Like, you can just stream them. And then it's just like, now it's just like, no, you need one of the top 4 quarterbacks or you can't win the league. And then it's like, oh, you should always just draft your running backs first because there's only a few really good ones, and then you can get a whole bunch of wide receivers. And it's like, now there's like 0 running back strategies, right? Like, you just don't draft one until like the 10th round. And it's like, it's so wild how everything's changed. And it might have to do with the overall strategy and what's optimal, but it might also have to do with
fantasy's also evolved, like it went from no points per PPR to half point to full point.
And it might
daily
also
fantasy influences a lot.
It might have to do with, what's available out there, what offenses are doing now, and, because the game itself is evolving. So fantasy should evolve with it.
Yeah, agreed. So best ball is the latest evolution. For anybody who's unfamiliar what best ball is, you just draft the team and then you set it and forget it. So you draft, I think, 12 players.
And just all your players play.
Players play. It takes the score of the best 10 each week.
Right. And there's no dropping and picking players up either. There's no setting lineups. There's no dropping players.
That's so nice.
Those players you drafted are the ones you got. If they all get hurt, you're done.
That's so nice. Like, if I was going to play fantasy sports, I want to have 0 maintenance.
I agree.
There you go. Yeah.
I agree.
I want 0 maintenance.
So we get the opportunity. We're going to be doing a bit of a partnership with Underdog. So we have the opportunity to do a bunch of best ball drafts. I think maybe this weekend we should fire a few off. Maybe have a Dan Zach on, somebody who's a little bit sharp in this area. Tell us a little bit about their strategies, what they think of how we're approaching it. Obviously, we don't know shit about shit.
No,
so we're
we
just out here firing, baby. Yeah, we just firing.
Yeah, we out here C betting range.
That's right. I think we got to get a couple entries in that circa millions too.
Yes.
Just
we have to. How do we not?
Yeah,
I mean, we not by not doing it.
Well, we're all lazy is the problem.
Well, what's the buy-in?
I think it's 1,000. Do you know, Justin?
What's lazy having
to do with 1,100.
1,100. Yeah. Well, we have to go register it.
You can't do it online?
I don't know. That's
you
the
have
thing.
to go in person.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's the laziness.
Too much energy.
I will go.
Yeah, we're gonna make Lamana be our runner.
Right, as long as I just get extra percentage points.
No, you get no extra ownership. It's this is an even deal. But
as long as the company's paying for the buy-ins, I'm good.
All right, we're not gonna do that either. But
I'm trying.
We'll compensate you.
I'm trying, Guapo, to get us in there.
I see that. I appreciate it.
We'll compensate you a little bit of gas money or something. But yeah, we need to do a little research. This is what we're going to be doing over the weekend. So be sure to stay tuned next week as we come back with a little bit of fantasy football. I want to close the show on a little bit of a sad note. I lost somebody very near and dear to me yesterday, I believe, in the afternoon. You guys may have heard me tell some stories about him in the past. Mike Bertolini, a good friend of mine, went by Berto or Big Mike if you're from New York, sadly passed away in his sleep yesterday. Big loss, very young. Oh, well, relatively young, depending on how you look at things. Very sudden and was not expected at all. Terrible news. I just spoken to him like a week ago. He was telling me how he was ordering a bunch of exercise equipment. He was a little bit overweight and wanted to get himself in better health. I think he was aware that, everything wasn't exactly on the up and up. And unfortunately, he passed away in his sleep. So I just wanted to give my condolences to his family, to his friends, to everybody who cared and loved him. Huge personality, great guy. We have a little bit of a montage to play out just to give you a little sense of who Berto was, not just to me, but to everybody that was fortunate enough to be in his presence. So I have to pack my bags, kind of let Berto know that I fucked up again. And I don't have to let him know, but he's my friend. I trust him. At that point, it's like, yeah, I think I'm just gonna try to get my personal training certification and just wait it out in that world for a while until another opportunity presents itself. And it's like having that conversation with him, it was just like a real low. And I think he saw that.
I said to him one day, I said, Matt,
what the fuck is wrong with you? It's like, I don't know, man. What do you want me to do? I can't win.
I said, I've been around the best at what they do my whole life. I know what greatness is.
He's currently Joe Montana's manager. He's like, I talked to Parcells. I've seen greatness. I know what it looks like.
I said, when I look at you and I listen to you, I see what I see in them, in you. And I felt that then, and I feel it today.
He's like, you have what it takes to be in that rare air. And I was like, look, man, it's not a matter of desire. It's like, and I believe you believe what you see, but, the record speaks for itself. I'm broke.
I said to Matt, I'll give you this $10,000, spread out over two things. This week, $5,000, and next week, $5,000.
I'm sending you the money. You give me 100 hours of coaching in return. It's like, okay, I'm in no position to say no. So I woke up the next day and he had sent half of it. $5K hit my bank account. And there's a tournament series at the Wynn.
Most people in life, will think, well, you need that. If you only have $20,000, you can't lend someone 10. No, but yeah, you can. If they need it, you can.
Sure enough, the third event I play is a $500 event, and Brent and I both final table it, and we end up finishing third and fourth. So now all of a sudden I have $30,000. And it's just like, okay, this guy knows something I don't.
He took the first 5 and he scored a tournament. He never looked back. He never asked for the other 5.